December 1944. Hitler's most infamous fighters, the Waffen-SS, leads a massive armored attack against American forces along the Belgian-German border.
And it started in one fell swoop. We chased away the Americans.
They are skilled, ruthless veterans and in command of the biggest and best tanks in the German army.
They had better tanks than we did.
I counted 7 rounds bounce off that Tiger. He just turned that turret and boom.
The Americans are outnumbered, outgunned, and caught in a fight for survival.
There were only suicide candidates against the Panzer.
This is the Sixth Panzer Army, Hitler's specially crafted war machine at the Battle of the Bulge, one of history's greatest tank battles. December 16th, 1944. Over 1,700 German tanks and 200,000 infantry attack U.S. forces along a 140-kilometer front. The Battle of the Bulge has begun. Spearheading the attack is the newly formed Sixth Panzer Army, made up of Hitler's most trusted and ruthless killers, the Waffen-SS. Their role is to punch through the thinly defended American line with 60,000 infantry, followed by 2 elite panzer divisions that will drive west and secure bridges over the Meuse River. A 3rd SS division will then advance northwest and capture Antwerp. By seizing this key Allied port, Hitler hopes he can stop the relentless Allied advance that has been routing his forces for the past 6 months.
We already found out about the American army during the invasion. We were impressed by the high number of people and the amount of material. We couldn't keep up with that.
Da konnten wir nicht mithalten. Da können Sie noch so tapfer sein. Das steht.
You could be as brave as you wanted, but no soldier can endure that. They were simply overwhelmed by the vast amount of material. At that point, a fight was basically already useless.
The German High Command cannot sustain a lengthy offensive against the well-supplied Allies. They must take them by surprise, striking quickly with heavy armor. And the 6th Panzer Army is the best-equipped armored force in the Ardennes. With more than 600 tanks, including 160 Panzer IVs, 215 Mark Vs or Panther tanks, and nearly 100 Tiger tanks. At 57 tons, the Tiger I easily outmatches the American Sherman tank. It's protected in places by up to 100 millimeters of steel plate and is one of the heaviest tanks on the battlefield. But its real edge is its powerful 88 millimeter main cannon.
Mit der enormen Durchschlagskraft.
With the enormous penetrating power of the 88, we were able to effectively fight the American tanks. Some of them we destroyed completely. We were able to let the enemy come fairly close. First of all, because of our own armor, and because of the strength and
76 millimeter was not strong enough for most of those German tanks.
the Sherman was an easy opponent for us. They could fire at us, but it wouldn't penetrate our tanks. They had to come close, within a few hundred meters, to have a chance.
The Sherman is relatively light and fast, but carries a low-velocity 75mm main gun that cannot penetrate a Tiger's frontal armor. Its own frontal armor is just 51mm thick, making it highly vulnerable to the firepower of a Tiger. The Americans are outgunned, heavily outnumbered. All they have to stop the Sixth Panzer Army are less than 60 Sherman tanks, 180 anti-tank guns, and only 35,000 infantry. And most of them are new arrivals who have never been in combat.
During that time, the Americans received a steady stream of reinforcements that had just completed their training but had not seen active combat yet. That's why all these troops here that bedded down on the night from December 15 to 16 were totally caught by surprise.
And it started in one fell swoop, and we chased away the Americans. The Americans dropped everything. The bad Germans are coming. Let's run. That's kind of what it looked like.
The Americans are caught by surprise, and the Germans quickly punch through their defenses all along the line. Desperate U.S. commanders order all available forces to the front.
Primarily, and during the Battle of the Bulge, they would just move us to wherever there was a hole to fill. And we, with our M16 half-tracks, 50 caliber machine guns, and we were anti-aircraft and anti-personnel. And our job was to protect the tanks. We were moving down a fire lane. The two Shermans were over to my left, probably 50 yards. And coming over the horizon and towards the Sherman was a Tiger tank, a big Tiger tank. Square front, reinforced barrel, and he just laid the trees down as he went and came right on through. Those Shermans, I counted 7 rounds bounce off that Tiger. And it didn't bother him any more than fleas on a dog. He just kind of shook them off. And he just turned that turret ever so slowly, and boom, out went one of the Shermans. And then he turned a little more, boom. So we got out of there as fast as we could.
We usually end up on a short stick. We have the light tank, and if one of them 88 shells hits that tank, it just blows it apart. They burn up, and you always have casualties. Body parts, dead ones, fire, and everything else. It's a sad thing. It really is. You stop and think how many guys, thousands of them, GIs laying in the gutters, laying along the roads, all mangled up, torn apart, and everything else.
December 17th, lead elements of the Sixth Panzer Army have advanced more than 65 kilometers into Belgium. At the spearhead is an elite battle group of the 1st SS Panzer Division, led by Lieutenant Colonel Jochen Peiper. Peiper is a veteran of the Eastern Front, a winner of the Iron Cross, and a former staff member of Heinrich Himmler, the infamous overseer of the Gestapo and the Nazi death camps. He is a ruthless leader, and his Kampfgruppe Peiper, with 120 tanks and 150 armored vehicles, is the most powerful armored formation in the Ardennes. By the 18th of December, they are only 68 kilometers from their primary objective, the Meuse River bridges near Huy. But they must first take a bridge across the Amblève River in the small Belgian town of Stavelot. The Allies are determined to stall the German offensive long enough to allow reinforcements to join the battle, and 250 Americans make their stand at the bridge in Stavelot.
We were on the half tracks, traveling at night for a long period of time, and it was cold. It was very, very cold. And all the while, there were red tracer bullets all over the sky. It looked like all kinds of red stars running around. And I think that started a little bit of fear in me, and yet, I won't say that I was brave about it, but I kind of got numb, I think, to the whole thing. We pulled over on the side of the road. Now, there was a river running across, and then there was a bridge at the end. That much I knew. Lieutenant Doherty and Sergeant Lowe said they were going to take Sergeant Armstrong and Sergeant Whaley's vehicles with them over the bridge, and that they wanted us to get our guns ready for firing. The object was to hold them as long as possible, hold them 6 hours if possible. We knew which way they were coming. There had been some previous intelligence that said that they were going to be coming down that hill road. It began to become light, and you could hear clanking. A lot of clanking, which was a sign that there were tanks nearby.
The ominous clanking is the sound of Kampfgruppe Peiper advancing straight into the heart of Stavelot. 40 of the biggest tanks in the German army, and the only thing standing in their way are 250 men and a few anti-tank guns. The Ardennes, a remote collection of fields, forests, and villages along the German-Belgian border. At first glance, this place seems untouched by the modern world. But closer inspection reveals grim evidence of a dark and violent past. It was here, in the winter of 1944, that Hitler launched his great Ardennes offensive, forever remembered as the Battle of the Bulge. In an effort to change the course of the war on the Western Front, 3 German armies launch a surprise attack on American forces in the Ardennes. On the northern front, the Sixth Panzer Army breaks through thinly defended American lines. At the spearhead of the attack is the elite SS Kampfgruppe Peiper. Now only 68 kilometers from their primary objective, the bridges along the Meuse River. But first, the Germans must capture the strategically important town of Stavelot. Defending Stavelot are 250 men, including a few dozen from the 825th Anti-Tank Battalion. Among them is gunner Lou Celentano.
It began to become light, and you could hear clanking, a lot of clanking, which was a sign that there were tanks nearby. And when they finally did appear on the hill in front of us, they looked like tigers to me. They were between buildings, so
In order to get a good shot at them, we had to destroy the buildings first. A job that our guns could do quite easily. We took bead on the houses first. We have a 50 caliber on the tracks too. 50 caliber is quite a gun. And now the 4 tanks were within our sight.
The 3-inch M5 anti-tank gun has a muzzle velocity of almost 800 meters per second, enabling it to penetrate 92 millimeters of armor at ranges of over 900 meters. But even that is not enough to penetrate the 100 millimeter frontal armor of Piper's Tiger tanks.
Tactics were supposed to be fire at all the vulnerable spots, which means you don't fire right in the belly, because in the belly is where he's got all this armor. Part of our luck was that the roads were extremely slippery. They were so sliding from side to side that they may not have given us the attention really that they would have given in dry weather. Of course, I was worried about the distance. And I remember giving the order of 900 yards. That really sticks out in my mind, that 900 yards. As we were taught, we cross-fired. I fired on the first tank, and Sergeant Houser's gun fired on the last tank. And as luck would have it, we hit the first and last tanks immediately. I said 900 yards, and I think I hit it right on the nose, because to hit them on first shots like we did, there may be a lot of talent involved, but I think it was 50% luck, because we really hit them hard right off the bat. We hit the tracks on both of those tanks. That was pure, unadulterated luck. Once his track is broken, now you gotta go for his turret, because he still can move that turret. They were disabled on the 2 ends, and the 2 guys in the middle got caught. They couldn't move. They couldn't move forward, couldn't move. Everything fell into place. That the training really paid. But in war, I guess, luck is an unknown quantity, but it sure counts.
The Americans destroy 4 tanks and slow Piper's advance. But it is not enough to stop him, and his tankers advance into the center of Stavelot.
This is the Amblev River that runs through Stavelot. Now, on the morning of the 18th, Piper attacked onto this bridge. Piper had mobile armor here on both sides of the bridge coming down from the north that had time a few hours before then to zero the whole location in. So he could actually throw shells down here. Disarmament battery, who was supporting the engineers, found themselves having to pull back away from the bridge, and they actually had to allow Piper onto the bridge at that time.
A Tiger Royal, a big Tiger Royal, swept over the hill, come down to the bridge area, and he caught Sergeant Armstrong's half-track before they had even a chance to get out of their vehicle. A couple of rounds from this Tiger Royal tank, and they were completely destroyed. Tiger Royal tank was coming. We could hear it coming, and we know we're next. There's nothing on earth we can do.
December 18th, 1944, day 3 of the Battle of the Bulge. Hitler's Sixth Panzer Army has advanced more than 65 kilometers into Belgium. Leading the attack is Kampfgruppe Peiper. This powerful armored column from the elite 1st SS Panzer Division seems unstoppable. Their objective, the bridges across the Meuse River. Taking them will open the way to the Allied seaport at Antwerp. By the morning of the 18th, Peiper and his tanks are only 68 kilometers from the Meuse. Nothing stands in their way but a handful of Americans defending the bridge in the village of Stavel.
A big Tiger Royal swept over the hill, come down to the bridge area, and he caught Sergeant Armstrong's half-track before they had even a chance to get out of their vehicle. We knew that that big Tiger Royal tank was coming. They're bigger than most buildings, for God's sake. We could hear it coming.
The Tiger Royal, or King Tiger, is a battlefield monster. It weighs 70 tons, more than twice as much as a Sherman, and is plated with armor that is in places 180 millimeters thick. Its long-barreled 88-millimeter main gun can penetrate even the heaviest Allied armor at ranges of over 3,000 meters, making it the most powerful tank on the World War II battlefield.
This is one of Kampfgruppe Peiper's Tigers. This is a King Tiger II. This was the warhorse of Kampfgruppe Peiper's unit. After looking at a Sherman, and then you see this, then you see what a tank is. They were firing 25-pounder shells from close range into this Tiger. And we can see here where they've glanced off the front armor, which is around 186 millimeters thick. And this here is a shell that actually went in to this Tiger and exploded out. Wouldn't have stopped it at 25 yards. That's how powerful this thing is. It's sporting an 88 cannon. It's one of the best cannons the Germans had in the field. This, you could forget it. Your war was over if you're hit by one of these things.
We knew that that big Tiger Royal tank was coming, and Lieutenant Doherty had already started ahead. He and Sugar, his driver, jumped out of the vehicle just a few seconds before the Tiger Royal fired and picked that Jeep up and knocked it across the road in pieces practically. Now, we know we're next. There's nothing on earth we can do except try to get out of there.
But Celentano and his men can't move their M5 anti-tank gun. Repeated firing has driven the tails deep into the ground.
In my case, the gun dug in so far because we fired so many rounds, it was very difficult to get them out of the ground. Then the Tiger Royal, for some reason or other, wanted to get into a better position to be able to fire on us. And he backed up into a huge building. Everything, the whole building came right down on him. And we made our escape before that Tiger Royal got a chance to do any firing. The whole building came down on
Despite the Americans' efforts, Peiper and his column cross the bridge, take Stavelot, and push on towards the Meuse River. Piper leaves behind a small force of SS troopers to protect his rear, and they quickly live up to their notorious reputation.
As Piper's pushing west, the troops behind him are basically running riot. They're going into houses, they're throwing hand grenades into cellars full of civilians, babies as young as 9 months old, pensioners in their 70s. They're doing just what they want, basically.
The village lies in ruins. 130 civilians are slaughtered, including the family of Arlette Mignon.
I was only 2 years old. We were living here, my parents and my 2 sisters and me. The morning of the 19th, there was lots of movement and we started to panic, so we went down to the cellar. In the afternoon, we heard footsteps on the first floor, and even though my mother was scared, and since my mother could speak German, she told them that we were civilians, but they shot at us anyway. My mother was hit, and she died with my 2 sisters. And I was in my father's arms. To make sure everyone was dead, they shot at us again. And my father got a bullet in the foot, and a bullet went through my leg. To be safer, my father brought me up to the attic. The Americans came and took us to the hospital and saved our lives.
Later that day, American reinforcements arrive in Stavelot, wipe out Piper's rear guard and destroy the bridge. But it's too late. Piper's main force is already on its way to the Meuse. As the 1st SS Panzer Division pushes west, the 12th SS Panzer Division is ordered to clear the twin towns of Krinkelt-Rockrath, held by stubborn remnants of the US 99th Infantry Division. The 12th SS is well equipped, fielding more than 14,000 men, 90 tanks, and 60 SP guns, including 40 Jagdpanzer IV tank destroyers. The Jagdpanzer IV is protected by 80 millimeters of sloped frontal armor and is powered by a 300 horsepower engine, enabling it to reach top speeds of 40 kilometers per hour. It is a 26-ton tank killer, equipped with a 75 millimeter high-velocity cannon, able to rip through even the most robust Allied armor. With all that firepower, it should be easy to take the twin towns. But in 1944, the whole German war machine, including the 12th SS, is running out of gas.
Bei dem Benzinmangel, wenn Sie aufpassen müssen mit jedem...
You can start an offensive that leads forward if you have a shortage of gas.
Das ist keine Voraussetzung, um einen Offensiv.
You have to watch every single liter of gas you spend.
Wir waren so auf Sparsamkeit trainiert und unsere Bewegungen beeinträchtigt.
Our movements were so impaired that a speedy progress was just not possible.
Ich sagte schon mal, wir haben
And inwardly, we were hoping to reach American gas
amerikanische
dumps.
Benzinlager zu erreichen. Das ist, glaube ich, der
On December 18th, we attacked Krinkelt.
Sind auch in die Ortschaft reingekommen.
And we made it into the center of the village, close to the water tower in
Vom
Krinkelt.
Wasserturm getreten. Wir haben in der Nähe vom Wasserturm
Close by the water tower was a hayfield, and we forged ahead, and we opened fire towards a village where we assumed Americans would hide.
Also Amerikaner sind geschossen. Beschossen worden, halb rechts.
We were under attack by anti-tank guns. There was a terrain with hedges to the right, and it was very well camouflaged in there.
In der Hecke war von der Seite voll erwischt.
And it hit us and our company commander full on, from the side, through a gap in the hatch.
He
was leaning outside the hatch with his torso to shoot at the Americans with his assault rifle. He took a deadly blow to the neck with flying shell parts. The gunners in my hats and headsets were blown from our heads by the explosion. It had been placed so cleverly and had hit us at such a weak spot that we had to bail out. We all made it out of the tank, although the driver was injured
ist für alle ein automatischer Ablauf.
For me and my crew, the operation in Krinkelt had ended.
It goes on like this for 2 days. The Americans bringing lethal fire onto the fuel and ammunition-starved 12th SS. And the German advance stalls only a few kilometers from their start point. The 6th Panzer Army is now 5 days behind schedule, and the German High Command orders the 2nd SS Division, originally intended to follow Piper's advance to the Meuse, to move south and attempt their own breakthrough. The well-equipped 2nd SS advances with 28 Panzer IVs, 28 self-propelled guns, and 58 Mark V Panther tanks.
Der Panther war bis Kriegsende der.
The Panzer was, until the end of the war, the most functional and best tank in the world, based on 3 components.
Zur Beurteilung ja 3 Komponenten anziehen: Geschwindigkeit,
velocity,
Geländegängigkeit und Panzerschutz.
Cross-country mobility,
und es gibt nur einen
and the tank protection.
Wo alle 3 in ihrem Bereich die höchstmögliche
And the Panther definitely achieves the best results in all 3.
Die hatten, wenn man so
They just didn't stand a chance against the Panther.
On December 24th, lead elements of the 2nd SS Panzer Division advanced towards Mannheim. To protect their rear, 2nd Lieutenant Fritz Longonki and a platoon of 4 Panthers are ordered to secure the village of Fresneux.
So we entered the village staggered.
Blieb dann stehen und
I stopped and thought I saw vehicles and started shooting.
Fahrzeuge zu erkennen und fing an zu schießen. Gleichzeitig
at the same time, American tanks were shooting on us.
It's an ambush, the decisive battle, the one that will determine whether or not the 2nd SS can take the Meuse River bridges, is about to begin. The Battle of the Bulge enters its 9th bloody day, and elements of the 6th Panzer Army have driven 80 kilometers into Belgium. But stiff U.S. resistance has stalled their advance. Desperate to reach the Meuse River, the 2nd SS Panzer Division is ordered to attack the Belgian village of Mannheim. To protect their rear, 2nd Lieutenant Fritz Longonki and a platoon of 4 Panthers are ordered to take the village of Fresneux.
On December 24th, I was a member of the 2nd SS tank company Das Reich, and I was leading the 1st squadron.
Und habe den ersten Zug geführt. Wir fuhren also gestaffelt.
So we entered the village staggered.
Und vor uns war dann der Kirchturm und
Ahead of us was the steeple and other houses.
davor aber eine größere Buschgruppe, die
But in front, a couple of bushes hid the view of the
die
street.
Straße versperrte. Ich blieb dann stehen und
I stopped and thought I saw vehicles and started shooting.
Fahrzeuge zu erkennen und fing an zu schießen. Gleichzeitig
At the same time, American tanks were shooting on us.
The Sherman M4A3 has a relatively underpowered 75mm cannon, but at close ranges it can still be deadly, especially if their target is the vulnerable 50mm armor plating on the side of a Panther tank.
Ich habe dann links der Straße einen Sherman erkannt
I recognized a Sherman on the left side of the street.
und kriegte dann viele Treffer.
We received lots of hits on the front sides,
Frontseite, dass die Schweißnähte
so
rechts
that the welds on the right side burst, and all of a sudden we had sunlight coming.
einer Tageswagen. Riesiger Krach im Wagen. Ne?
It's an enormous noise inside, and your nerves have to be solid for that for sure. And we had them.
Ja, wir hatten die. Und die anderen
The
Wagen,
other vehicles had been hit as well. I saw that the barrel of one of them had fallen off. The fourth had not been hit and drove back with the others.
ich bin dann auch zurückgefahren und wir haben uns
I drove back as well, and we returned to the bluff and stopped there.
gearbeitet hat, hingestellt. War mir
I was rather sure that it was just a question of time until the American tanks will show up here as well.
Ich hatte mittlerweile mir
In the meantime, I did some observation on the area around us.
ich habe dann mit meinem Wagen
I fired on 3 different points in the area, like a tree, and something to get the exact distance.
angeschossen, damit ich die exakte Entfernung hatte. Man schießt das ab, so dann hat man
This is common procedure to measure the distance for firing later, to assure 100% hits.
vornherein sicher als absolute Treffer zu erzielen. Ja, und gut,
Good thing I had prepared this before, because shortly after, 5 Shermans showed up.
5 Sherman jeweils abgeschossen. Die Entfernung war
The distance wasn't that big, maybe 500 or 600 meters.
Ich hatte ja die exakten Entfernungen und habe die
As I had the exact distances, I managed to shoot the first 4 Shermans with only 1 round each.
mit jeweils nur einer Granate jeweils abgeschossen. Der letzte hat sich noch
The last one tried to back off. I finally managed to reach this one as well.
den auch dann
The battlefield is littered with burning tanks on both sides, but the Americans win the day. They stop the advance towards Manhay, putting an end to the 2nd SS Panzer Division's hope of reaching the Meuse River. Farther north, the 1st SS is not faring any better. Kampfgruppe Piper, the once powerful spearhead of the 6th Panzer Army, is now in a battle for survival. They've been trying for 9 days to cross the Amblev River Gorge, but each time, U.S. engineers blow the bridges just as they arrive. To make matters worse, U.S. forces are now securely in control of Stavelot. Piper's elite battle group is cut off and running dangerously low on fuel and ammunition, and American reinforcements are closing in. The noose is tightening on Kampfgruppe Piper. 23rd, 1944. The Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's great Ardennes offensive, begins to falter. Kampfgruppe Piper, the spearhead of the Sixth Panzer Army, is no longer on the offensive, but fighting for survival. Piper's running low on fuel and ammunition, and the Americans are closing in. Piper orders his tankers to dig in the village of La Glaise. One of the men is Sergeant Rolf Ehrhardt.
A large number of American Shermans appeared on the backslope road. After the first Tiger fired and missed, the Shermans formed up an unexpected front and began firing rapidly. The American shells burst through the houses. Suddenly, Tiger Commander Hunch appeared with both hands pressed against his head. His Tiger had taken several hits. The numerical supremacy of approximately 15 Shermans negated the weapons superiority of our Panzers. After these losses and the shortage of everything, what would the next day bring?
December 24th. The Americans prepare for one big final push against Piper's forces at La Glaise. They amass 4,000 men and over 200 Sherman tanks. At 0300 hours, they attack.
The attack went perfectly and exactly as planned. The instant they started shooting, we opened up with tank, machine gun, and mortar fire. We were all in the town by 10 o'clock that morning. We were utterly amazed at what we saw there. Besides scores of dead and wounded Germans, we found over 175 vehicles in the immediate vicinity of La Glaise alone.
We're in La Glaise. This is one of Kampfgruppe Piper's Tigers. So here we have a testament to the power of a German tank in 1944. They didn't come bigger or better than this machine here. It was left in a field behind this schoolhouse here in La Glaise, because La Glaise was the place where Piper made his last stand. This is where the net tightened around him. By Christmas Eve, 1944, the game was more or less up for Kampfgruppe Piper. Piper abandons La Glaise. He leaves all his armor behind. He leaves all the half-tracks, all the artillery, all the tanks, everything. And he goes out of this place on foot. He walks out of La Glaise.
On Christmas Day, Piper and the 800 remaining men of his armored battle group straggle back to German lines. In 9 days of fighting, they have lost 70 tanks. More than 2,000 men are killed, wounded, or captured. Across the Ardennes, the fighting continues. And on January 12, 1945, the Germans are overwhelmed by Allied reinforcements and air power. And the Battle of the Bulge comes to an end. Hitler's final gamble has failed.
Wir haben das Beste draus gemacht, was zu machen war.
We did the best we could.
Auch der Soldat.
The soldiers themselves tried to fight as hard as they could.
So gut es ihm möglich war.
If you're lacking a lot of things, you can fight as much as you want. But if there's no material, you can't go forward. You just have to draw back.
Irgendwo, wenn das Material ausgeht, kommen sie auch nicht.
That's how simple it is.
Dann müssen sie zurückgehen. So einfach ist das. Nur unser Glaube.
Only our faith was stronger than what we had. That's how it was.
So sah es aus.
The casualties on both sides are enormous. More than 90,000 German soldiers are killed, wounded, or captured. Almost 20,000 Americans die, and 50,000 are wounded.
We lost a lot of people. we would lose 40, 50 men at a crack. How many times I got out of tanks alive, yet my buddy that couldn't get out would be half in and out of the tank hollering, Les, I'm on fire, get me out. And you'd see the fire gush up over him, and he'd die right there.
At the time, I didn't think anything of it. All I was worried about was getting out of there. You know, I was very proud the next day, but you also realize that costs. You know, that's another thing that happens to you kind of late. You realize what it costs to some of your very best friends. But wouldn't want to do it again. That's for sure.